was a cold night, and I was going nowhere at all awfully fast. I'd missed the last train, and there wasn't another one due for hours yet. My collar fluttered like a dying bird in another burst of wind, and I cursed and pulled it tighter. I'd been up late last night, but then again, when wasn't I? I'd just wrapped up a case and was writing out a bill to some dame who'd been curious as to what her fellow did when the lights went out. She wasn't going to be happy, but my pocket was. The clock was just starting over when an envelope slid under the door. I didn't hear footsteps, and I'm not big on opening doors real quick. You never know what's on the other side. After a minute, I'd crossed to the door and picked it up. It was slim and weighed about as much as the breath of a dying man. I slid the contents onto my desk to find 2 train tickets and a small piece of paper. The first part was typewritten. Train Y37 42 Drive-by line. Your tickets. Underneath was a hurried note in frantic handwriting. Train routes, core trio, protect the public's health. Do not skip this station. Night service, 238, 417. I looked at the tickets and saw the first train arrived at 2:38, the second at 4:17. But other than that, the message was about as clear as a Chicago night during a snowstorm. There was something about the writing that made my head pound, though I couldn't say what. Looking back, I should have let it go. When you've been in the business long enough, you learn to listen to yourself. Sometimes it's a little thing, like going around a block to lose a tail you're not sure is there, or not taking a case because you didn't like the way the man said the word detective. Other times it's life or death, knowing when to not stick your neck out, when to make sure you're holding your revolver. Other times, it's fate. Maybe that's why I found myself on the platform, waiting for a train I didn't want to take, when I should have been in my bed. I'd never taken the train before. Time was everyone took the train, heading out to California, expecting gold or fame. They generally drifted back over the years colder and poorer and bitter, or didn't come back at all. More often than not, it was better that way. To me, that station was a killer. It promised a world that wasn't its to give. Made dreams of paper tickets and cross-country tracks. And when a man loses a dream, it's like a woman losing a child. All of a sudden, there's nothing left to live for. 3 a.m. in the morning at an empty train station is about as cold as it gets no matter where you are. The dark swallows everything, even sound. The light I was slouched under was making a half-hearted attempt at illumination, but it kept flickering as if it too had lost its will to live. I had never felt so alone in my life when I heard footsteps behind me. I turned, and she stepped from the shadows. She was tall for a broad, with legs that seemed to never end. Black coat, black dress, red lips, and curves that wouldn't have been out of place on the screen. Looking at her eyes, I could tell she was a woman just waiting to be rescued, and I had an uncomfortable feeling I was the one intended to do the rescuing. She seemed familiar somehow, but I couldn't place her.
Hey Joe, can I bum a smoke?
Her voice was low and full of sex, but her eyes were sharp, and her nails clicked like a tarantula doing a tap dance. She sat down, and I handed her a cigarette. Where are you headed?
Anywhere but here.
Here's not so bad. She looked at me for a second, then blew a mouthful of smoke into the air and closed her eyes. I thought perhaps she was going to sleep, but then she started to speak.
The wheels turning black, cold, dark, wet, the snow blinding, the hand of God screaming in the air, like a thing dying, like a thing dead. The wheels turning back, rushing through the darkness, going through life like a thing dying, far from its bed.
The silence was colder than before, but I was shivering more from her words than the wind. She'd ruffled me. That was for damn sure, though I wasn't about to let her see it. My response came out more brittle than sarcastic, but it did the trick. She opened her eyes at the sound of my voice. Waiting for God?
Oh, no, the train. There is no God, mister.
The hell was that about the hand of God, then?
You don't remember?
I almost believed the surprise in her voice. She lost her call girl air, her calculated grace, and just looked at me, the cigarette dripping ash, her mouth dripping smoke. Her hair trembled like a newspaper in the wind.
We met on the platform.
I searched my memory, but like a flash she was gone. Back inside herself, her persona settling around her as close as snakeskin.
Thanks for the smoke. The train will be here soon. You won't want to miss it.
She threw the butt in front of her. A quick, violent motion. I watched it land, still glowing, somewhere in the dark, not moving. She stood and slid away, leaving me alone in the dark, alone with myself and my questions. The rail began to tremble. I looked for the light, but I couldn't see anything yet. I thought about that note. Thought about the dame, insincere and drop-dead gorgeous. Then it clicked. I hadn't met her before. I'd been looking for a man last year. Just another case that kept me up at night. He'd led me on a pretty chase across half the city and back, and we'd ended up in the station. The details were fuzzy, but he'd given the game up, sent his missus out with his deal. Black coat, black dress, red lips. Coward changed his mind halfway and shot her as she walked into my arms. She hadn't been innocent, far from it. There was a robbery, and maybe a murder to her name, whatever it had been. He'd shot himself, but she'd died. On the floor of that platform, she'd said a prayer, and not another word after. The rails were screaming, and I could see the light now. It seemed like the whole world was shaking. The note. I pulled it out and reread it. I realized what had bothered me all along. The words meant nothing to me, but the handwriting was mine. I had written this note. I had sent it to myself. I had put myself on this platform to catch a train to anywhere but here. The wind snatched the paper from my hand, and I heard the whistle of the train. Like a thing dying, I whispered. The light swallowed me up. far from its bed.